The Impossible Mountain, March 14th, 1940, Bletchley Park, Buckinghamshire, England. 3:47 a.m. The fluorescent bulbs in Hut 8 cast sickly shadows across Alan Turing's face as he stared at the blackboard. Numbers covered every inch of the slate surface, calculations that seemed to multiply like bacteria under a microscope. His chalk-dusted fingers traced the equation one more time. 5 rotors, choose 3, arrange them in order. 60 possible rotor selections. Then multiply by the ring settings, 26 positions per rotor, cubed. That's 17,176 rotor positions alone, but that was just the beginning. Behind him, Peter Twin hunched over intercepts from the previous day, streams of 5-letter groups that might as well have been hieroglyphics without the daily key settings. Each message represented ships in the Atlantic, U-boats stalking convoys, men who would live or die based on whether the mathematicians in this drafty hut could solve an equation that expanded faster than any human could calculate. "The plugboard," Turing muttered, his Cambridge accent sharpened by exhaustion. "That's where they buried us." The steckerbrett, 10 cables connecting 20 letters in pairs, leaving 6 unchanged. The number of possible plugboard configurations alone exceeded 150 trillion. When you multiplied the rotor selections, the ring settings, the initial positions, and the plugboard permutations together, you arrived at a number so astronomically large that even if every person in Britain spent every waking moment testing settings, the war would end before they tested a fraction of a single day's traffic. Gordon Welchman appeared in the doorway, his breath visible in the unheated hut. He carried more intercepts, still warm from the wireless operators, at the Y stations scattered across England's coast. "Admiralty is asking when we'll have something actionable," he said quietly. Both men knew what actionable meant. Convoy SC-7 had lost 20 ships in 4 days. The U-boats were hunting in wolf packs, coordinating their attacks through Enigma encrypted messages that Bletchley couldn't read. Turing turned back to the blackboard. The mathematical reality was crushing. Each new rotor position meant the entire Keyspace shifted. The German operators changed settings daily at midnight, Berlin time. Every morning at 0001, a mountain of 159 million possibilities materialized. Fresh, impenetrable, impossible. And British sailors died while that mountain stood untouched. "We need a machine," Turing said, "not a thinking machine, an exhaustion machine." His mind had been circling this concept for weeks. The Enigma's weakness wasn't in its mathematics. Those were sound. The weakness was in its patterns, the predictable structures that German operators couldn't avoid. Military messages contained cribs, probable plaintext fragments. Weather reports began with wetter. Naval messages referenced grid coordinates with known formatting. If you could mechanize the testing of rotor positions against these cribs, if you could build something that checked thousands of settings per hour instead of one every few minutes by hand, you could turn that astronomical mountain into something manageable. But how do you build a machine to fight another machine? The Enigma itself was elegant, 3 rotors spinning through their positions like a mechanical ballet, each keystroke sending electrical current through multiple transformation layers before illuminating a cipher letter. After each letter, the rightmost rotor advanced 1 position, changing the entire encryption pathway. After 26 letters, the second rotor stepped once. After 676 letters, the third rotor moved. The machine never encrypted a letter as itself, and it never produced the same encryption twice in a row for repeated letters. Welchman moved to the blackboard, adding his own calculations. If we assume the crib is accurate, we can eliminate rotor positions that produce contradictions. We test only the positions that maintain logical consistency across the crib. His diagram showed how a single confirmed letter relationship could cascade through the rotor wirings, either validating or invalidating entire branches of possibilities. Turing nodded slowly. A logical machine, not brute force. Logical elimination at mechanical speed. Outside, the March wind rattled the hut's windows. Somewhere in the Atlantic, another convoy was steaming toward Britain, loaded with food, fuel, ammunition. And somewhere beneath those waves, U-boat commanders were encrypting attack coordinates that would arrive at Bletchley as meaningless letter groups, unless the mountain could be moved. The clock above the door clicked to 4 a.m. 20 hours until the Germans changed their settings again. 20 hours when today's mountain would remain standing and a new one would rise to replace it. The architecture of impossibility, Bletchley Park. 1 week later, March 21st, 1940, 11:15 a.m. Commander Edward Travis, Deputy Director of the Government Code and Cipher School, stood in Hut 8, examining the technical drawings spread across Turing's desk. The proposed machine looked like something from a telephone exchange. Drums, wires, relays arranged in configurations that Travis barely understood. What he did understand were the numbers Turing had written in the margins. Tests 20,000 rotor positions per hour. Reduces daily keyspace to 8-10 hours processing time. And if the crib is wrong, Travis asked, then we've wasted 8 hours, Turing admitted. But if the crib is right, we hand the Admiralty actionable intelligence while it's still relevant. U-boat positions while they're still in those positions. The fundamental problem was one of scale. A human cryptanalyst working with paper and pencil could test perhaps one rotor configuration every 10 minutes if they were fast and lucky. That meant 6 per hour, 144 per day if they never slept, never ate, never made an error. The military Enigma's Keyspace, after you factored in the 3 rotors selected from 5 available, their initial positions, ring settings and plugboard configuration, contained configurations numbering in the hundreds of quintillions. The mathematics weren't just daunting, they represented a wall so high that human cognition couldn't scale it. But Turing had identified the crack in that wall. German operators, bound by military protocol, introduced patterns into their random settings. They chose rotor orders that were easy to remember. They set initial positions that spelled words or abbreviations. They used the same plugboard pairs repeatedly, because swapping 10 cables twice daily was tedious work in a cramped submarine radio room. And most critically, they sent messages with predictable content. Joan Clark entered the hut carrying intercepts from the Kriegsmarine, the German Navy. She'd been analyzing transmission patterns, noting which call signs sent weather reports at 0600 hours, which transmitted supply requests, which coordinated tactical movements. Weather stations are consistent, she reported, laying the sheets beside Turing's drawings. Always begin with Wettervorhersage or abbreviated forms. Naval grid references follow standard formats. If we know the message type, we can predict 6 to 8 letters of plaintext with high confidence. This was the crib, the known plaintext fragment that would serve as the bomb's target. The machine Turing envisioned would simulate multiple Enigma machines running in parallel, testing rotor configurations against the crib at electromagnetic speed. Each simulated Enigma would represent a different rotor order and position. When the machine found a configuration that transformed the crib correctly into the ciphertext, it would stop, the drums would halt, the relays would lock, and the operators would read out the settings. Welchman had refined the concept further. He'd recognized that the Enigma's reciprocal property, if A encrypts to B, then B encrypts to A, created logical chains throughout the rotors. His diagonal board addition would exploit these chains, allowing the bomb to test not just individual letter pairs, but entire networks of interconnected letters simultaneously. This multiplied the machine's efficiency exponentially. Instead of testing rotor positions one at a time, the bomb would test the logical consistency of dozens of letter relationships across the full crib in a single pass. Harold Doc Keane from the British Tabulating Machine Company had visited the previous day to assess feasibility. Keane built calculating machines, punched card tabulators for business applications, Could he build something to fight the Enigma? "It'll need 30 rotating drums," Turing had explained, walking Keen through the specifications. Each drum simulates one Enigma rotor in one position. The drums must stay synchronized. Any drift and the test results become meaningless. The electrical contacts need to be precise to within thousandths of an inch. Keen had taken notes, sketched modifications, calculated power requirements. How fast must the drums rotate? As fast as possible, without the contacts arcing. "We're racing midnight, Mr. Keen. Every hour the bomb runs is an hour the Admiralty operates blind." Now, examining the approved drawings, Travis initialed the budget authorization. "Build one prototype. If it works, we'll need dozens. The Americans are entering the war. They'll need their own production." He looked at Turing directly. "How certain are you this will work?" Turing met his gaze. "The mathematics are sound. The engineering is feasible. The question is whether the Germans make enough mistakes for us to exploit." He gestured to the intercepts covering his desk. Hundreds of messages per day, each one a potential window into the Enigma, if only they could test settings fast enough. "They're human, Commander. They'll make mistakes, we just need to be fast enough to catch them." The first machine, Bletchley Park, August 8th, 1940, 2:30 p.m. The machine dominated the room in Hut 1, a bronze-colored cabinet 8 feet tall, 7 feet wide, weighing more than a ton. 30 drums arranged in 3 banks of 10 rotated with a mechanical rhythm that sounded like distant thunder. Doc Keen's engineers had delivered the prototype 3 days earlier, and since then the bomb had run continuously, testing configurations against intercepts from the German Navy's Dolphin network. Turing stood beside the machine with Diana Russell Clark, one of the Wrens, Women's Royal Naval Service members, trained to operate the bomb. The drum's rotation created vibration that traveled through the floor. Each drum was wired to replicate one of the 3 Enigma rotor positions, with 10 complete sets, allowing simultaneous testing of multiple rotor orders. Electrical current flowed through the drum's contacts, following the pathways that the crib dictated. When a rotor configuration produced a logical contradiction, when the crib couldn't possibly transform into the ciphertext under those settings, the test continued. But when a configuration maintained logical consistency across all letter relationships in the crib, the machine stopped. "Drums stopping," Russell Clark announced. The thunder died to silence. She checked the position indicators on each drum, noting the letter visible through each window, then cross-referenced against the rotor order sheet. "Position Alpha 712, rotor order 253, stop at position KFZ." This was the critical moment. The stop might indicate a valid key setting, or it might be a false positive, a configuration that satisfied the crib by coincidence without being the actual German daily setting. Turing moved to the verification station where a standard Enigma machine sat configured to the bomb's indicated settings. He began typing the ciphertext from that morning's priority intercept, a message from U-boat headquarters to operational boats in the Atlantic. German words appeared under his fingers, real words, U-Boot-Gruppe, Marschbefehl, Quadrat, grid coordinates, attack orders. The crib had been accurate. The message did contain a tactical directive beginning with predictable formatting, and the bomb had found the settings in 4 hours instead of the weeks that manual testing would have required. "It works," Welchman said quietly from the doorway. He'd been in Hut 6 working Army and Luftwaffe intercepts, but news of the stop had traveled fast. "Travis needs to see this immediately." Within an hour, Hut 8 was translating that day's Dolphin traffic. U-boat positions emerged from the cipher, coordinates that the Admiralty could use to route convoys away from Wolfpack formations. The intelligence wouldn't arrive in time to help every ship, but for the first time since the war began, Britain could read German naval coordination in near real time. The mountain of 159 million possibilities had been climbed in less than a working day. But one Bombay wasn't enough. The Germans used different Enigma networks, Dolphin for U-boats, Red for Luftwaffe, several others for army groups and diplomatic traffic. Each network used different rotor selections, different daily keys, different plugboard settings. And the Germans, sensing that something might be wrong, occasionally changed their procedures. They added fourth rotor to the naval Enigma in 1942, multiplying the Keyspace by another factor of 26, rendering the 3 rotor bombs temporarily obsolete until 4 rotor machines could be designed and built. The war became a race between German security measures and British mechanical ingenuity. Doc Keen's factory produced bomber after bomber. By 1943, over 200 machines were running across multiple locations, their drums spinning day and night. Each machine was named, often after wartime figures or terms: Agnes, Victory, Cobra. The Wrens who operated them worked in shifts, loading the drum configurations, setting the crib menus, watching for stops, verifying results. They didn't know what the machines did. Security compartmentalization ensured that Bombay operators never saw the decrypted messages, never knew that their mechanical thunder was reading German minds. Turing watched the prototype continue its run, moving to the next configuration, seeking the next stop. The machine wasn't intelligent, it didn't think, didn't understand. It simply tested, relentlessly and rapidly, eliminating impossible configurations until only the possible remained. In the war of astronomical numbers, the Bombay had turned mathematics into mechanics, and mechanics into survival. Outside Hut 1, summer rain fell on Bletchley's grounds. In the Atlantic, convoys steamed through waters that were slightly less dangerous than they'd been yesterday. The mountains still rose every midnight, but now Britain had machines to meet it, bronze-coloured thunder that turned the night's work into morning intelligence, and impossibility into something almost routine.